Our fourth presentation in this section is called Yeah, the OSLO Knowledge Graph is Growing, Challenges and Improvements. And for that, we have here with us Bert van Nuffelen, who is semantic data interoperability expert at Digital Vlaanderen in Belgium, and Laurens Vercauteren, who is team lead for Digital Vlaanderen here in Belgium.
Thank you very much. And so I want to introduce you to the OSLO Knowledge Graph and the fact that actually this semantic repository is actually growing quite heavily over the years. I want to share with that and what are the challenges as well we come across to it. But first of all, you need to know what is OSLO standing for. It's not a city in Norway, but it stands for an acronym Open Standards for Linked Organizations. And over those decades of that program exists, actually it still is a very well-fitted acronym. We do and we focus on making standards, making agreements, and since this is in the core of the program, doing with a good governance in co-creation with all the partners that are along on this. So this is the core of the focus on it, and the goal is to make the information and hence the organizations more interconnected. So this is our focus on it, and we do this through these data standards. And for that, we need a method, of course, and to the practical way of working. And for that, we use semantic web technologies to build the data standards, and we build and maintain publishing tools. So these are the supportive actions that our team is providing to create together with the teams over there for data standards in a co-creation in a well-established governance model. And if we do this one by one, so you make a data standard one by one, it's each time a different document, then in the end you end up with a lot of different documents. But what is our task as team is to make that into one integrated knowledge graph. And that's the underlying mood, and that's what we're making. And so this is what we make on there. To give you more insight into it, saying what that, so over the years, it is growing and so on. So we have at this moment, and I didn't publish, put them not on the slides because they are always changing and you can interpret them differently, but we have 174 different standards which are acknowledged and saying in firm, this is what we want to go forward within the Flemish ecosystem. And there are another 50 to 55 some in progress and in running on that. And that means that we have about 5,000 terms already acknowledged and saying this is recognized terms that we want to maintain and take care of, and a few thousand more that are coming and to be acknowledged. So this is a growing path on it, and you can explore this to our standardization register. What you see there in the background is, so this colored blues is that we actually do not touch on one domain. So we are very diverse, going from environmental data observations to credentials in education, over person data exchange. So it's a various of domains, and that means that those domains get interconnected in those data. So this is some underlying work that we do. We try to interconnect not only the communities, but as well the data that is present in those communities. And if we look then to the challenges that coming around that, is that this activity, when we started 10, 15 years ago, we had Europe where CEMIC was active, and we took a mirror and implemented all this stuff in Flanders, and we worked on that. And then slowly we realized, okay, yes, we do well in Flanders, but there's as well in Belgium an interfederal layer. So Belgium is a federal country, and actually you have to do the same thing and to get to more adoption and, let's say, use of our standards that we do at Flanders within the Belgium layer. And this is what happens into it. So we actually are looking to formally to install this same activities at the Belgian level. It's called then ESEG, another acronym. But in the practice, and this is the goal, and this is a challenge for us, and to make it together with the interfederal level, is that actually this is more merged. Officially they're distinct things, but we work together to get so that data standards are acknowledged and working not only at the Flanders level, but at the Belgian level, and that we can move very smoothly across. That the effort to go from one layer to the other is smoothened. So this is a challenge and a work that we are doing. But this needs to happen. And you see that there is a bit of a gap between Europe, this intentionally, because this is not happening at this moment, to my knowledge. There are a few elements, but we are not able yet that we somehow can merge this whole thing together and that all the standards are moving up and down in a very nice way. This is a little bit too much still at the moment of manual effort to keep that doing. One of the other things, if we look towards the success and the challenges we have with our data standards, is that in the beginning of when we started, organizations came to us say, okay, in this ecosystem and this part, we need a data standard that will help us forward. And then it works. But then we entered in the area of organizations that say, okay, yes, we want to do some digitalization, but we don't know how. And then it's not only about creating a data standard and agreeing on it, but it is as well of ensuring that the more global data maturity is in there. And then you need actually to embed your data standardization activities in a broader context. And in particular for smaller organizations, and if you look to the same activity at city level and then they are very small IT departments, or 2 size people, 3 size people, and they want to make standards, how you do that. And this is where VLOCA, this is a Flemish local city architecture initiative, will aid to combine and to assist those cities to actually achieve a digitalization with standardization embedded into it. And so this kind of coaching creates kind of this supportive effect that there are more standardization happens, even if it comes from smaller and immature team, and as a side effect, those teams become more data mature. So we have this kind of flowing thing, and this is something that will help and create better standards as well, and more adoption, more interest into it. Then another topic, and then you start, of course, small with data standardization, is that we focused in the beginning at 2 elements, and they still are the core of our activities, and it's our vocabularies that are the data specifications that are intended just to collect terms with definitions for broad reuse, to try to reuse as much as possible, and then to apply them in a particular context, what we call application profiles. And these things are the core on it, but we see over the years that there's as well need and interest into standardization or building agreements that are more going towards the data side. For instance, code lists, controlled vocabularies. If you have an application profile stating there must be a status code list available, then the next question comes in the implementation. What is the code list to be used? And what is the governance around that code list, and how you do this and how you agree upon. So you enter in the same process, but then for code list and controlled vocabularies. And so we take that up and we try to organize ourselves on that. And the same happens when you move from the application profile. For us, this is still on a high level. It's not tackling one single system, but the need when we move towards the more concrete data exchange, then what we call then the models that are actually describing the data that is being exchanged, that we call implementation models. Those actually look like application profiles, have a slightly different governance, and should be managed as well. And how we deal with that, and how we can support upon that, and how we create a kind of wider range of agreements so that the trust in all these standards is becoming bigger and bigger. For that, we need as well publishing tools. Just a quick point on that is that we have on the 4th version of our tool chain into it. And we realized that we had to do some things better on quality itself, to look in self, to do introspection, saying, is a publication quality good enough? Do we not miss things? And as a side effect of that, we can produce better statistics, get a better insight into it, and we are in the process of doing that. And we add to that auto-translations, so not only the manual translations, but support for auto-translations, so that this becomes in the Belgian context, so the Flemish, Dutch standards as well becomes natively readable for our colleagues in Wallonia and Brussels, and in the German region. And one aspect is that we as well look towards what we actually produce and the documentation and the specification itself, the HTML, which is the reference, that we try to highlight way more the reuse aspect of which elements we actually are building our data standards and our agreements. And all that toolchain 4 activities lead to as well to create a better knowledge graph that we can use for other activities. So this is kind of lessons learned that we have improved on this, and this leads to new opportunities. And then on the reuse, this is something I want to share with you. This is everyone agrees this is kind of the first principle of data specifications. And it's good to realize that reuse actually does many things. It binds terms together, but in different ways. And we are not always very clear in which way we actually see the reuse and what we mean with the reuse. So one typical element of reuse, of combination, is that terms are specified in the semantic web in namespaces. So they are bound by the namespace. So you are knowing that these terms are governed under this namespace and in this way. But if we take application profiles or implementation models, they actually use and consume from many vocabularies the terms. So now the question is, who is owning the term and doing something? What is the governance over this? So you get already 2 over this. And then we have a third one, very broad, which are the data spaces. And you could say, okay, look, in this area, these are the terms that we combine and use and own, and we want to have a governance. And so you get this semantic web binding through the different governance elements into it, and you have to be aware, and we have to build specifications that can support all this. So it means that sometimes we have to say we are not putting all the constraints we would like in this layer. For instance, we should not put cardinalities in vocabularies at the namespace level. We only will do that at profile level, because if we want to reuse something in another profile, all of a sudden this cardinality is there, and what I have to do with it. Or in the definition, in a namespace, you would say not this is the first name of a person, and then have as range resource. Then you get into the conflict, then you actually can use technically this first name for a car, while the definition says for a person. So you have to be aligning yourself and doing some efforts on this support for reuse. And that gives a number of challenges that we realize and we have to work upon, and we are with the team on discussing how to do this. Some challenges are happening very heavily at creation time. What are the trusted ontologies, the other vocabularies that we can use? If that data specification we have identified is the relevant context into it? Are those terms really reusable? So we get sometimes comments, you cannot reuse this one in this way, while we would like to do it. And so this kind of discussions. We have as well questions like, how did other profiles do the same thing? So for instance, contact information, you can find it everywhere. The question is, how did in other contexts processed contact information? Can we reuse that? And then how to find that? And one thing that with having such many domains, is that we struggle with how to reuse non-semantical web data standards specifications. Yeah. And that is very heavily. we have challenges as management time as well, and doing that. And to give one element of that of support in this is that we are looking for what can AI help us. So everyone does this, of course, and this is our experiments, and it shows that if you open up, and this is what we have done with our knowledge graph, so the data Vlaanderen BE site is queryable with ChatGPT, and you actually can start querying the knowledge graph over it, and you can ask what are the terms into it and what you can do with it. And you can even add, and this is the priming document thing, the guidelines on how to model according to the OSLO guidelines with those terms then doing things, or we are working with an MCP server to have the scope onto it. And then I just want to conclude that we still are open and hope that with the European community, we can work towards a more larger and better integrated knowledge graph, not only for the Flemish level, but European-wide, and that we can move from Belgium to the Netherlands, to Czechia, to Italy, and actually reuse a specification that is built in Finland for our needs at ease. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, let's go to some questions that have come in via Slido. I think you may have answered this in the presentation. The question is OSLO maintained only in Dutch? If so, what does the auto-translation mean? I think you said it's also in French?
Well, so we maintain, and this is because we have some language legislation, so that means that also in Flanders must be in Dutch, and so that's the prime language that we work in. If we work in the context of the interfederal country, Belgium, I think, then we actually have our 4 official languages that every data standard has to comply to and has to be agreed upon. So if we move standards from the Flemish level to the interfederal level, then all the official translations, because that's the thing, an auto-translation, it assists you to understand and to give insight into it, but it's not an official translation. So from the moment we move to the interfederal level, then the official translation kicks into it and then becomes manually maintained, etc.
Okay, makes sense. Next question. The OSLO domains show a similarity with Eurovoc. Have you thought about an alignment with it?
Well, there's a difference. Eurovoc is a concept scheme, so it's a lot of concepts and vocabulary. This is kind of this layer. So in the OSLO, we take the premise that we are designing the terms for data exchange, where Eurovoc is, as said before, mostly designed for document tagging. So the purpose is slightly different. And that makes that the terms might be overlapping here and there, but they are not in the same purpose and therefore in a slightly different structure. But you could map for the domains where it is relevant.
Okay, and final question. Can you please explain concretely what's the difference between code list, controlled vocabulary, and named authority list? Are they the same concept?
Okay, this is something more for the colleagues at the publications office, I would say. On behalf, if I look from the OSLO knowledge activities, we would see them all as the same because it's actually managed code list, controlled vocabularies, etc. Terms that you want to use in the data in a very good governance model. You see that in the OSLO data standards that everything calls this SCOS concept. We know that we can map on this and we rely on that this is well managed. What's actually structured on it. So we rely on teams like the publications office to produce those we can just say, this is a SCOS concept.
Okay, great. Well, how about a round of applause for all of our speakers in this session?